So one thread of this that I'm very concerned about is the effect of Instagram in particular, maybe TikTok to an extent, on teenagers and tweens, and in particular girls, because of the ability to put these unrealistic filters on your face and your body, and the constant feedback of putting your face and body out into the world and having the world judge you with a number of likes, and the fact that it never turns off. You know, in America, TikTok never turns off. In China, they have the I don't know what do they call it, wisdom to turn it off after a certain point. So this is something I'm concerned about, but there have also been studies that have found fairly small effect sizes when looking at the overall correlation. So is this a case where there's a concentrated effect on a small subset of the population? And how do you parse this research?
Yeah. So let me start with the research, and then I'd like to turn it over to Ricky to talk about what's actually happening to the girls. So many people have heard that the effect size of social media on mental health is small. You might have heard it's no larger than that of eating potatoes or wearing eyeglasses, because it comes from one study in 2019 that did a big advanced statistical analysis on 3 large data sets. And what they found was that the correlation between digital media use, all screen time, and 1 or 2 questions about mental health was equivalent to a correlation coefficient of about 0.03, which is trivial, which is tiny. But this is a complete misunderstanding of the data, because that was for digital media, all screen time. And in their own data, the effect for social media was more than twice as large. And their own estimate was one of the lowest ever found. They themselves, in later studies, find that, well, everybody else is finding it's more like a correlation of around 0.1 to 0.15. But that's for everybody, all boys and girls. And when you look at just girls, it's higher. So now we're up to around 0.2. And that's about as high as public health effects get. If you want to look at the effect of lead exposure on adult IQ, it's around 0.1. If you want to look at smoking on cancer, it's around that too. So when you get a correlation of 0.2 with some behavior and girls' mental health, you would be completely insane to let your daughter do this. And this same team that is the main debunking team, they themselves published data 2 weeks ago, finding that, well, when you look across the ages, you know, that we still think the effect is small, but actually for girls 11 to 13, it's actually bigger. Yeah. So if you look at everybody on all devices, it's small. If you look at prepubescent girls going through puberty, posting photos of themselves for strangers to rate and comment on, there is no way to make this okay. Yeah. There is no way that this is not going to be devastating to an entire generation of girls. That's the data talking. What's the experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think any woman in this room knows what it feels like to be a teenage girl, and then to have this nonstop digital metric in your pocket that's always there. It's like, I feel like in the 90s, it was the magazine covers that are unrealistic body images, and they're always there, and kids are scrolling through them as they're going to sleep. And, you know, especially as a young woman who's developing and growing up and like developing a body, to look at these like insanely altered and unrealistic images is hugely damaging. And I'm fortunate that I'm old enough that I think I was like 11 when I got onto Instagram, but that was before the days. That was when it first came out, and it was still dog photos and sunsets and what you're eating for lunch. And then it got more and more sinister. And I look at people just a few years younger than me who've been absolutely crippled by that. And, you know, every young woman is concerned with the social hierarchy. And this is putting a direct numerical value on people. It's hugely disturbing.
Let me just add, there's an interesting new discovery that brings it back to a lot of our interest here with FIRE and Heterodox Academy. And that is, there are now 2 data sets that have looked at teenagers in which the teenagers say what their politics are, whether you're on the right or the left. Yeah. And both have found it's girls on the left who they get depressed and anxious first in 2012, 2013, before any other group. And one study by Pew, the question was, has a doctor or mental health professional told you that you have a mental disorder? 56% of Gen Z girls on the left say yes. Yeah. 56%. No other group is, some groups are half that, but so something is going on. And I think it's both the gender difference, it's also girls are much more interconnected. Nick Christakis' old data shows this. Emotions travel on networks of female friendships. Boys are more clueless and autistic. They literally don't pick up each other's emotions, but girls do. And so girls don't just pick up each other's emotions, they pick up each other's mental disorders, they pick up each other's moods. So girls are much more susceptible to contagion. And girls on the left they marinate in this victimhood culture at a time when the progress on women's rights and women's is unbelievable. The rights revolution was incredible. And all of a sudden you get a subculture that won't believe that thinks everything is oppression, everything is terrible. We'll be paid we paid 78 cents on the dollar. They believe all these things. And so I think part of what hit us on campus, we had some suspicions about this, but we didn't say it in the book because it was controversial. We weren't sure.
We're dudes.
But now, what?
And we're dudes too.
And that's right. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But the data that it was hitting young women harder was just overwhelming.
So there's a huge there's a three-way interaction of age, sex, and politics. Yeah. And the group that is most hostile to free speech, I'm afraid to say it, but it is young women on the left.
When I give my talk on the book, John and I have been doing this update. We tried to write an afterword for Coddling the American Mind, and it ended up being 50 pages long, and it would have made the book more expensive. And so we decided to break it up in chunks, and we're introducing it on persuasion. But when I do the charts of how much worse suicide has gotten, how much since the book came out, how much worse self-harm has gotten, people being checked in for it. But the one that I really like, and every time the slide comes up, the spike in suicides for young women and also boys between the age of 10 and 14.
Yeah.